The wheels of the Amtrak clattered against the tracks, the landscape blurring past the window in a backward rush. After finalizing the paperwork, I was traveling light, heading back to my hometown on the first train out. All I had was a backpack, and inside were 2 thin folders. Before I left for New York to marry Victoria, that backpack held just my essential documents. Now, on my way home, it also held a divorce decree. I had arrived with nothing, and I was determined to leave the same way. My phone buzzed. It was the housekeeper, Mr. Evans. He said the young master was crying for his father and asked if I could come back to see him. I answered without a moment's hesitation. Mr. Evans, you have a wrong number. Henry's new dad will be there soon, I added. The one he and his mother have always wanted. They say his son is like his mother, and it's true. Henry wasn't just a carbon copy of Victoria. They even liked the same man. There was a time I tormented myself, wondering what I'd done wrong. Looking back now, I realized I was just too stubborn. There was no point in holding on to that kind of misery. Oh, and Mr. Evans, I said before hanging up, do me a favor and pass a message to Ms. Davenport for me. Tell her she can rest easy. I won't be showing up at her life ever again. When I stepped off the train, I tossed my SIM card into a trash can on the platform. From now on, everything and everyone in that city had nothing to do with me. While waiting for the bus to my town, I noticed a little girl about Henry's age looking around timidly. Her big, round eyes were welling up with tears as the crowded terminal pushed her back and forth. Without a word, I moved to stand behind her, shielding her from the jostling mob. A moment later, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. Mister, I can't find my mommy, she whispered, her dirty little face scrunched up in a plea. Can you help me? I scanned the area, but no one seemed to be frantically searching for a child. I checked the time. My bus was about to arrive. I scooped the little girl into my arms and carried her to the station's police precinct. After I explained the situation, the officer's expression soured. He told me he'd seen cases like this before. The girl probably didn't have a birth certificate, no official records. He said she was likely abandoned. Leaving a kid in a crowded station was a cruel trick. The child can't keep up, but it also gives them a chance to be found, hopefully by someone who can give them a hot meal. Sure enough, after some gentle questioning, it turned out the girl didn't even have a formal name. Just a nickname, Maddie. The 2 officers said they would do their best to investigate her identity and find her parents, but for now, she'd have to go to a state-run children's home. I frowned. Let's put aside whether you can find them, I said. Even if you do, what happens when you send her back? She just waits to be abandoned again, maybe somewhere no one will find her next time. The officer fell silent. I'd already missed my bus, so I had time. Maddie, I said, using a wet wipe to clean her face. Until we find your mom. How about you come home with me? The officer looked troubled. Sir, I can't let you do that. We have regulations. I'm a local, I said, pulling out my driver's license and the folder with my town residency papers. My house isn't far from here, and I was married. Let's be honest with each other. We both know what those state homes can be like. A kid shouldn't have to go there. If you're worried, you can file a report. I'll register as a temporary guardian. You can stop by any time. Maddie seemed to understand. Her tiny hand squeezed my finger, and she wouldn't let go, no matter how they tried to coax her. She didn't say a word, but her actions spoke for her. And just like that, when I boarded the next bus, I had a child by my side. The old house hadn't been lived in for years and was a little run down. It took Maddie and me nearly a week to clean the house and yard. I hung a framed photo of my mother in the living room. The police stopped by a few times during that week, but the news was always the same. The investigation is ongoing. I knew what that meant. One night at dinner, I asked Maddie if she wanted to be my daughter. Her cheeks were stuffed with food, but she nodded her little head over and over. After that, with the help of the officers, we fast-tracked the paperwork. My file was no longer a single, lonely page. The second page now read, Daughter, Maddie Miller. Maddie Miller. It had a good ring to it. I'd thought about giving her a new name, something meaningful, but her old one felt right. Maybe, once upon a time, Maddie was loved by her parents. I couldn't imagine what had happened to make them abandon her so heartlessly. Watching her, so diligent and sweet around the house, I couldn't help but think of my biological son, Henry, the little prince of the Davenport family, who was given the moon when he asked for the stars. I had married into the Davenport family, so of course my son didn't take my last name. It didn't matter. I had Maddie now, and she was 1,000 times better than Henry. Maddie would often blink her innocent eyes and ask me why I adopted her. And every time, I'd smile patiently and tell her, because we were both abandoned. 2 lonely people aren't lonely anymore when they're together. Hearing this always made her eyes curve into happy crescents. She'd dance around me, as if it were the greatest affirmation in the world. Daddy and Maddie aren't lonely anymore. I got Maddie enrolled in the local elementary school without much trouble, but school meant more expenses. To cover them, I opened a small diner near our house. With good cooking and fair prices, business was decent. When things got busy, I didn't have as much time for her, but Maddie was so well-behaved. She never caused any trouble and would even help me greet customers after finishing her homework, calling everyone sir and ma'am with a sweet smile. Before long, everyone in town knew I had a wonderful daughter. Life went on like that, one day at a time. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from her teacher. She told me Maddie had gotten into a fight at school, a bad one. I jumped on my electric scooter and rushed over. The teacher met me at the entrance, and seeing my furious expression, she tried to calm me down. Don't worry, none of the kids were hurt. But it was a huge scene, and the teachers couldn't break it up. We had to call the parents. I relaxed a little. I know Maddie, I said. She's never mentioned having problems with any of her classmates. What on earth happened? The teacher explained quickly. It wasn't with one of her regular classmates. It was a conflict with a new boy who just transferred here. She glanced at me, her tone suddenly odd. The new student, Henry Davenport, says that Maddie's father is his father. I stopped in my tracks. Who? The teacher was just as confused. The boy's name is Henry. He saw a photo of you and Maddie on her backpack and started getting agitated, insisting that Maddie stole his dad. It must be a misunderstanding, she added. Your last name is Miller. The boy's is Davenport. How could that be? I didn't say anything, just followed her to the office. The second the door opened, my eyes searched for Maddie. I saw her sitting quietly in a chair, doing her homework, and the knot in my chest finally loosened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the little boy who'd been making a scene freeze when he saw me. His eyes lit up, and he ran toward me with his arms outstretched. Daddy, I missed you so much. I crouched down slightly and gently, almost imperceptibly, nudged Henry to the side. You got the wrong person, kid. Henry's face was a mask of shock. I ignored him and walked straight to Maddie. She had been calm, but the moment she saw me, her eyes turned red. Big, fat tears threatened to fall, and my heart ached. I pulled her into a hug. It's okay, sweetie. Daddy's here. Maddie clutched my shirt, her nose sniffling as she fought to keep the tears back. Okay, I won't cry. Maddie doesn't cry. She pursed her lips and rubbed her eyes, being so brave it hurt. Maddie didn't cry. Henry did. He wailed, sobbing about how I'd abandoned him. When he saw I was paying him no attention, the teacher tried to console him, but he wouldn't listen to anything she said. Just as she was at her wit's end, the sound of high heels echoed down the hallway. It was a sound I'd known for years, one I couldn't forget. Sure enough, the office door swung open, and the beautiful face from my memories appeared before me once again. Our eyes met for a brief second before we both looked away. I bent down and squeezed Maddie's cheek. Maddie, can you head home first? Daddy has something to take care of. I'll make you your favorite shrimp scampi for dinner tonight. Maddie nodded hesitantly, looking back every few steps as she left. Daddy, come home soon, okay? I will. Be careful on your way, sweetie. The moment she was gone, Henry saw his chance. He wiped away his tears and scrambled over to hug my leg. Daddy, I'm sorry. Don't be mad. Let's go home, please. I sighed, patting his head lightly before turning to face Victoria. Ms. Davenport, can we talk? It's a big world, but it's a small one, too. Lovers can feel worlds apart, separated by mountains and seas they believe can be conquered. But for strangers, even standing side by side, the distance is insurmountable, a cosmic alignment that will never occur. I never thought I would see Victoria again. Becoming strangers on opposite ends of the earth should have been the best ending for us. When my mother was young, she and Victoria's mother were the best of friends, the kind who shared everything. Because of that, our families always visited during the holidays. After high school, I was heading off to college in New York City, a world away from home. My mother, who couldn't leave our town due to a chronic illness, worried about me living alone in a big city, so she reached out to the Davenports for my sake. Victoria's mother agreed instantly, promising she'd look after me. She even arranged for her own daughter, Victoria, to pick me up from the train station. That day, I emerged from Penn Station, struggling with my luggage, and saw her immediately. Victoria stood out like a sculpture in a crowd. She was leaning against a luxury sedan in a sleek black dress, her elegant presence a world apart from everyone else. The stunning woman and the expensive car made more than a few passers-by turn their heads. As a small-town kid, I'd never seen a woman so beautiful. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could barely string a sentence together. But I knew my place. People like Victoria and I existed in different universes. A firefly can't compete with the moon, but just seeing it shine was a gift. Victoria's mother often invited me over to their house for dinner, and over time, I became familiar with their world. That's how I heard about Victoria and her high school sweetheart's love story. They were like the main characters in a novel, constantly breaking up and getting back together. Their story is a cycle of arguments and passion. I was just a background character, an insignificant bystander who occasionally felt a pang of loneliness. My junior year, I started an internship. I hadn't gone to a top-tier school, so the only position I could find was with a small firm far from campus. The commute alone took hours every day. Victoria asked me about it once, and I just laughed it off, trying to brush it aside. But that night, I got a call from her mother. She told me they owned a small condo near my office that had been empty for a while, and she insisted I move in. I was incredibly grateful. The days of leaving before sunrise and returning after sunset were draining me. When I got to the condo, I realized it wasn't empty at all. Traces of Victoria were everywhere, along with the torn-up photos of her and her boyfriend. Feeling like an intruder, I carefully tidied up the place, trying not to touch anything that belonged to her. One evening, I came back exhausted and found Victoria there, drowning her sorrows in alcohol. She poured out everything to me, how good she had been to him, and how he had left her anyway. This time, she said it was really over. I just sat there and listened, a silent sounding board for her pain. For 2 weeks, I was a corporate drone by day and her caretaker by night. Maybe she was touched by my tireless support, or maybe she just needed a replacement to fill the void. For whatever reason, fate finally smiled on this little firefly, trying so desperately to fly. Victoria asked me if I'd be willing to try being with her for a while. In that moment, it felt like the moonlight was finally shining on me. It was a beautiful thought. If only life could always be like the first time you meet, then you'd never have to feel the sting of changing seasons. The afternoon sun was setting, casting a golden halo around Victoria as she stood in the now silent school hallway. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked, her lips pressed into a thin line, her tone as cool and formal as ever. I got straight to the point. Henry and I were never close, and it's been a long time since the divorce. Why is he acting like this now? Ryan, what are you trying to say? It was my mother. She kept talking about you to Henry. I didn't say anything. And why transfer him to a school out here? This town is nothing like New York. He was the one crying and screaming that he wanted to find you. No one could stop him. After a pause, she added, "Not even me." In the Davenport family, Henry was the revered young master, the sole heir. No one dared to deny his requests. Not even the ever-principled Victoria. I thought I was done with the Davenports for good. I never expected this kind of mess. "It's fine," I said, my voice calm, as if it had nothing to do with me. Once his expectations aren't met, he'll change his mind. Victoria was the same as always, but so was I. I had never been the favorite of either of them. Once Henry spent enough time with me, the idealized image of a father in his head would shatter. I would go back to being the low-status, biological father he used to despise. At 8 years old, Ryan Miller picked up a tree branch and dreamed of being a knight in shining armor, defending the weak. By the end of the afternoon, he had laid waste to every dandelion in the yard, and himself. At 18, fresh out of his ivory tower, Ryan Miller dreamed of becoming a wolf of Wall Street, manipulating the markets with an invisible hand. At 28, Ryan Miller just wanted to run his little diner and take care of Maddie. Sometimes he'd write stories online, and a single like would make him happy for hours. From that day on, a driver brought Henry to my diner every evening. He was a customer, and I couldn't just kick him out. Victoria rarely showed up. A place like my diner wasn't fit for a corporate CEO like her. I couldn't figure out what the Davenports were thinking, sending their sole heir to a remote, small town. Were they counting on the fact that I was once his father? I used to take care of him, to be there for him, because he was my family, my own flesh and blood in this world. I did so much for Henry without asking for anything in return, but he couldn't use that as a reason to look down on me. I have a heart, too. I get hurt. Life as the man who married and was hard enough. He was the reason I endured it all. I stayed until he started to grow up, to talk, to form his own opinions. And that's when he started to hate me. I told Henry he couldn't be wasteful. A 9-tiered cake was unnecessary for a birthday. He called me cheap, saying the Davenports had plenty of money. I wouldn't let him bully other kids, and made him apologize. He accused me of taking their side, of not defending him. I thought he was just a kid who didn't know right from wrong. I was the one who always had to discipline him, so it felt natural that he wouldn't be close to me. Until the day Victoria, who was always too busy, finally took him out for the day. When they got back, he stood with his hands on his hips and yelled at me, in a way I'd never heard before. "I don't want you to be my daddy anymore. Uncle Graham is way better than you. I want to be my daddy," he shrieked. "You're not even a Davenport. You don't belong here." So that's what it was. Victoria had cleared her schedule to take our son to see Graham, her old high school sweetheart, who had just returned to the country. Maddie hated Henry's presence. She not only ignored him at school, but also avoided him at the diner. But being a thoughtful little girl, she never said it out loud. She just constantly hovered around me, physically blocking any chance for me to interact with Henry. I saw it all, and it made me smile sadly. Maddie, you don't want Daddy to talk to Henry, do you? Caught. She looked down shyly, fidgeting with her fingers. Then her eyes welled up. He's a bad person. He's going to take you away. For my kind, gentle Maddie, calling someone a bad person was the harshest insult she could muster. No, he won't, I said softly. Remember what I told you? We're two lonely people who found each other. We're not going to be separated again. But Daddy, why do you always look so sad whenever you see him? I froze, unable to say a word. I hate him, she whispered, her voice cracking. He keeps showing up and making you sad, and he's trying to steal you away. I hate him. The more she spoke, the more upset she became, her voice turning into a sob. I quickly lifted her into my arms and held her tight, gently teasing her by rubbing my stubble against her cheek. Daddy, your beard tickles. Maddie finally giggled through her tears. To keep my daughter from worrying, I made a point of never letting my gaze linger on Henry again. Victoria used to warn me with that cold tone of hers. If you keep being so petty, no one will ever love you. Not me, and not our son. That was because I didn't want Graham showing up around them all the time. I had no response back then. But now, I could proudly tell her, you're wrong. My mother loved me. Maddie loves me. And now I love myself. Victoria started showing up more often, always looking a bit out of place as she condescended to sit in my small diner for a while. Occasionally, she'd order a dish or two, take a few polite bites, and then leave with Henry. Even so, her presence was striking. Regulars started asking what the story was between us if she had her eye on me. I'd always wave my hand and laugh it off. I'm just a cook. She's not blind. Why would she be interested in a divorced single dad? She's just here to pick up her kid. The truth was, Victoria was coming by more and more. In the past, I would have obsessed over what she was thinking. But now I didn't care. She could come or go as she pleased. That included Henry. I didn't know when he would finally get tired of this little game. This was a sleepy little town, the country in his eyes. There were no amusement parks, no fancy dessert shops, not even a mall. And certainly, there was no affection from me. All my care was poured in my daughter. Whenever he saw me laughing and playing with Maddie, he would look down, dejected, only to force a smile moments later. I guess it's true what they say. You always want what you can't have. It's not just for adults. It applies to kids, too. But my feelings can change, too. When I used to love him, I would ache for days if he got a little scrape or bump. Now, he was no longer my concern. It wasn't hatred. It was just an absence of feeling. Time flew by. The air outside grew thick and heavy, and the cicadas buzzed relentlessly from the trees. One day, Henry didn't show up. I figured he'd finally come to his senses or gotten bored of his tedious game of winning back his father. I imagined he was on his way back to the Davenport estate to resume his role as the precious young master. But that evening, after closing up, I stepped outside for some fresh air and saw him and Victoria waiting by the door. Henry was dressed formally in his favorite little suit, holding a large cake box. Victoria looked like she had dressed up for the occasion, too, a far cry from her usual rushed appearance. But the weather was hot, and beads of sweat dotted both their foreheads. They had clearly been waiting for a long time. When he saw me, Henry jumped to his feet and held the cake out in front of him, showing it off like a trophy. Scrawled messily on top were the words, "Happy birthday, Daddy." It looked like he'd decorated it himself. Victoria stood and walked toward me, holding a gift bag. Ryan, she said, her voice uncharacteristically clumsy and hesitant. Happy birthday. She couldn't hide the flicker of hope in her eyes. Their presence was so out of place in our small town that it had attracted attention, which of course hadn't escaped Maddie. She came running out, her little arms spread wide as she planted herself in front of me protectively. No, today is not Daddy's birthday. Henry stuck his neck out and retorted loudly, yes, it is. Daddy and I have the same birthday. I remember. He almost never spoke to Maddie. While my presence kept him from bullying her, he was always quietly, intensely jealous. It's not this day, Maddie insisted. It is. Seeing that they were about to start a real fight, I quickly pulled Maddie behind me and spoke to Victoria and Henry calmly. My birthday changed. It's not that date anymore. I paused, and you don't need to trouble yourselves with something so trivial. In truth, the ritual of a birthday celebration was a rare thing in my life. It was usually just a big bowl of noodles my mother would make in the morning, with a perfectly cooked sunny-side-up egg. But then, there was no one left to make them for me. The last year my mother was alive, she splurged on a plane ticket to come celebrate my birthday with me for the first time. I didn't want her to worry, so I hid the truth about Victoria and Graham, pretending our marriage was a happy one. The reality was, even in the beginning, Victoria had always been cold to me. I thought she was just hurt from her past, that her personality had changed, and I believed I could melt that block of ice. After Henry was born, she became even more distant. I reasoned she was just pouring all her affection into our child, and I understood. Until Graham appeared. Suddenly, Victoria was like a dormant branch bursting into vibrant bloom. The coldness, the indifference, it all vanished. That's when I finally understood. I probably wasn't even a replacement. I was just a tool to make Graham jealous, to force him to come back to her. Marrying me was just a gambit to get her real prize to return. And when he did, I became an inconvenient, embarrassing obstacle. Sometimes I hated myself for how much I endured. I pretended not to care in front of Victoria. I pretended to be happy in front of my mother. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't because I had Henry. I was ridiculed by the Davenports, scorned by Victoria, and mocked by Graham. I survived one birthday after another until my mother, for the first and last time, came to see me. That night, as she was leaving, she insisted it wasn't right for her to stay over. I couldn't stop her. As she opened the door, she turned back to say one last goodbye. The moment she turned around, she saw Victoria wrapped in Graham's arms, the two of them locked in a passionate kiss. Then she had a heart attack and collapsed. You hear more sincere prayers in a hospital than you ever do in a church. I sat outside the operating room, begging every god in the heavens to show some mercy, to save my mother. I tuned out the sounds of arguing around me. Even when Victoria's mother came to comfort me, I couldn't respond. Maybe because I'd never been very religious, the gods didn't answer. The light above the operating room door went out, and the surgeon came out, shaking his head. He said her body was too weak to survive the surgery. They were breaking protocol to let us in, to say our final goodbyes. This couldn't be happening. An hour ago, my mother was telling me to live well, to bring her grandson home for a visit sometime, to call ahead so she could cook. Now, she was lying on a surgical table, her breathing faint, her eyes cloudy, mumbling my name. Victoria's mother was sobbing, repeating over and over how sorry she was, how she'd failed me and my mother. I ignored everyone, just gripping my mother's hand, praying for a miracle. Perhaps sensing I was there, she had a final burst of energy and was able to speak. Son, Mom knows now that you haven't been happy. You were just trying not to worry me. Even on her deathbed, her face was filled with pain for me. I'm sorry. Mom can't be with you anymore. You have to take care of yourself. Don't let them walk all over you. Her words became fragmented, trailing off until they were barely a whisper. Victoria's mother swore an oath right there, saying that from now on, I would be her own son, that she wouldn't let me suffer another day of injustice. She dragged Victoria over and forced her kneel and make a promise. Victoria spoke, her voice low with emotion. Don't worry, I will take care of Ryan from now on. My mother looked so sad. She closed her eyes for the last time, 2 tears rolling down from the corners. My whole life, my biggest regret, she whispered, was making that phone call, asking you to take care of Ryan. Her hand grew cold in mine, but never loosened its grip. She couldn't let me go, even in the end. But she was gone. She left with regret, with remorse, and with a love for me that she couldn't take with her. My mother had wanted me to move to the big city, to live in a big house. Now, she was confined to a small black box, buried in a cemetery. Graham showed up at the funeral. He had the gall to say he was there to pay his respects. I grabbed him by his perfectly styled hair and slammed his face into the ground. People rushed to pull us apart. Graham screamed he was going to call the cops. Victoria frowned and said I was being too impulsive. That day, in front of the entire Davenport family, I said, enunciating every word, if it weren't illegal, I would kill you both with my bare hands. Everyone's face was grim. I didn't care. There was probably no one left in the world for me to care about. But 2 lonely souls were destined to meet. Finding Maddie gave me a daughter to care for. My life, from that point on, wouldn't have to be spent drowning in hatred and pain. As for that so-called birthday, I never wanted to celebrate again. Being the center of attention on the street wasn't going to work. I told him to come inside and sit down. Maddie's little legs scrambled as she ran to get a calendar from inside, one on which she'd circled a date with a red marker. She pointed to the circle. This is Daddy's birthday, she declared, looking up at me proudly. I smiled and nodded in praise, but I couldn't help but notice Henry twisting the hem of his suit jacket, wrinkling the perfectly pressed fabric. His nose twitched, and he looked at me anxiously, wanting to say something but not daring to. Victoria silently stacked the gifts on the table, then bent down to arrange them neatly. I'm sorry, this was my mistake. Next time. There's no need to buy gifts next time. I interrupted. And there's no need for next time. Victoria's body went rigid. Her hand, still arranging the gifts, slowly clenched into a fist before relaxing limply. She turned to look at me. Ryan, can we please talk properly? She lowered her eyes, waiting for my answer. It was a rare sight, a woman like Victoria Davenport actually pleading. I needed to grab something from my house anyway, so I led her into the yard. Maddie and I had taken good care of it, planting all our favorite vegetables. In a prominent spot, a patch of wildflowers Maddie had transplanted from somewhere was blooming with brilliant color. It's beautiful here, Victoria said, sounding unusually flustered for a woman who was used to boardrooms and galas. You can tell you've put a lot of heart into it. I didn't have time for pleasantries. I went inside, got what I needed, and came back out. Thanks. There's no one else here. You can say what you want to say. She bit her lip, choosing her words carefully. I've been seeing you a lot lately, and I've noticed there doesn't seem to be anyone else in your life. She took a breath. If you're willing, would you consider remarrying me? I just stared at her, my brow furrowed. She quickly looked away. Henry is still young. He needs a father, a complete family. He was just a kid before. He's much more mature now. So could you please? So why don't you ask Graham? Victoria froze. Isn't that what your family always used to say? That I have no education, no looks, no status? That I was completely unworthy of being a Davenport's husband? That only Graham, who you've known your whole lives, was the perfect match. Don't tell me you didn't hear the whispers. Everyone in your family already accepted it, didn't they? I got out of the way. It's exactly what you wanted. Victoria looked down. That's all in the past. Between us. Everything between us is in the past, too, isn't it? But we have a child. We have Henry. So, what does that change? I shoved the bank card I'd gone back to the house for into her hand. This is for Henry's child support. I'll make a deposit every month. Victoria tried to refuse, but I stopped her. This is my only legal responsibility to you, and I'm fulfilling it. I don't owe you anything else. I've forgotten when, exactly, we ended up like this. Maybe my love for Victoria was a mistake from the very beginning. But it wasn't just one-sided back then. She didn't show it often, but she did care. Before we got married, I looked her in the eye and asked her, "Do you really want to marry me?" And she looked right back and said, with total conviction, "I do." I clung desperately to those scattered moments of affection, gathering them together, hoping they would be enough to light my path forward. And they did. They lit it up enough for me to see it was covered in thorns and mud, that every step I took would be painful. But those little sparks of affection gave off no warmth. They weren't enough to keep me going. They only made me see with perfect clarity how unbearable our marriage, our love, truly was. Remarry you? And go back to being a tool? A stand-in? A servant? I asked, my voice rising. Victoria, what in the world is going on in your head? She grew frantic, trying to explain as she bowed her head. I wasn't thinking that. I genuinely want to get back together with you. And I lied about Henry. It was me. I kept talking about you, and he overheard and started remembering you. And that's why. I cut her off without a second thought. There's no need. I have Maddie now. She could come with us. I would treat her like my own daughter, no different from Henry. Victoria, think about it. We've been divorced for 3 years. I raised my voice on the last sentence, and it startled her into looking up at me. A bitter smile crossed her face. Yes, she said, her voice choked with emotion. 3 years. I can't believe it. Did I come back too late? I sighed. It's not about being early or late. It's that in these 3 years, I haven't been blinded by the past. I've learned to look forward. Sometimes I dream. I dream I'm back in the days just before Henry was born. Victoria is heavily pregnant, laughing at me as I frantically rehearse the entire process of getting her to the hospital. Honey, you're being so dramatic, she'd say in the dream. I think you're more nervous than I am. Of course I am. This is serious stuff. You and the baby have to be safe. I'd lean against her and press my face to her belly. She'd rest one hand on her hip and stroke my forehead with the other. But it's just a dream, a memory, nothing more. Victoria's shoulders were shaking. Her hair fell forward, hiding her face. As proud as she was, she would never want anyone to see her look so weak. I wasn't cruel enough to watch. I turned to leave, to give her a moment alone. Before I could walk away, she grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were long and slender, the fine veins on the back of her hand clearly visible. She had always been thin, but now she looked frail, almost sickly. Standing this close, I could hear her suppressed sobs. Don't come here anymore, I said softly. You have your world, and I have my life. Take Henry and go back. I'll pull my wrist free, and take the birthday gifts with you. I looked at her one last time. My birthday now is the day I divorced you. The day Victoria and I signed the papers. The day I came back to my hometown and found a little abandoned girl named Maddie. She didn't know her own birthday, so we made a pact. The day we both got a new lease on life would be our new birthday. If you really want to give me a gift, I said, my voice hardening, give me some peace and quiet. And for that, Victoria, I thank you in advance. Victoria returned to the diner without saying a word, her eyes red as she prepared to take Henry and leave. Henry, who was so much like his mother and sharp for his age, seemed to understand everything. He stubbornly refused to go, wailing that he wanted to stay with me, struggling against Victoria's grip. Let go. I'm not leaving. I want my daddy. Daddy, I'll be good, I promise. Don't leave me. Mommy, you would eat. You said Daddy would forgive us. I don't care. I'm staying here. But for the first time, Henry's demands, which were usually treated like royal decrees, had no effect. Victoria dragged him away step by step. As the car door closed, Henry pressed his face against the window, his little hands beating against the glass as he stared at me, his expression pitiful. I didn't look. I waited until I heard the sound of the car driving away. Beside me, Maddie gently tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, are they going to come back? No, sweetie, they won't. Then, are you still going to be sad? I knelt and cupped her small face in my hands. Maddie, being sad is temporary. Time is the best medicine for everything. No matter what kind of pain you face in the future, just keep moving forward. Don't look back. Eventually, the clouds will part and you'll see the sun again. I had started walking forward on that day, and I had come a long, long way. But Victoria, it seemed, was still stuck in the same place. And maybe that was for the best. We were people on two different roads who happened to cross paths for a moment, but we were always destined to part. There was nothing to regret and no reason to wait. A lifetime is long. No one can walk the whole road with you. A lifetime is also short, with no time to look back and linger. If only life could always be like the first time we met. But people change. It's the one thing you can count on. My relationship with Victoria was a mistake from the start, one that I had personally, finally, brought to an end.